I'm much more interested in having musicians express themselves in ways that they haven't before. And that kind of is in tune with all the work that I did on Tiny Desk and now with Global Sound Concerts is like how to get musicians maybe outside their comfort level a little bit, where we're capturing a performance in a real environment without the use of certain technologies.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the Your Creative Mind podcast. I'm your host, Izolda Trachtenberg. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I am thrilled to bring you this week's guest. If you've heard a Tiny Desk concert and thought, how does something so raw and immediate feel so polished? Today's guest has the answer. Josh Rogosin, the senior audio wizard behind more than 800 Tiny Desk concerts and the founder of Global Sound Concerts, knows how to capture the heart of a performance, whether it's in a DC office or halfway around the world. Today, we're going to explore how deep listening, cultural curiosity, education, and creative collaboration can elevate not just the music, but the people behind it today and tomorrow. And whether you're a creator, a traveler, or someone searching for the sound of connection, this conversation is going to tune your ears and your mindset towards what truly matters. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Hi Izolda. How are you?
I am fabulous. I am so excited to have you here. Right before we started recording, we talked a little bit about our mutual friend who's also been on this show, Petra Mayer, and the incredible work she did to bring the attention of books and book reading to global populations. And now you're here, and I'm so excited to talk to you about the really amazing work you've done and the work you're doing to bring music and culture to today's people and the people of tomorrow. So I'm really glad that you're here.
Yes, I am too. There's one correction already I have. I'm
Oh,
so sorry.
please.
My last name is pronounced Rogosin, not Rogosin. Yeah.
Okay, so you know what's interesting about that? I took that from when they introduced you at the New York Public Library event.
And I'm sure they
And
did it wrong too.
yeah, and I should have asked before we started recording this because my name is not Nancy Smith. My name is also mispronounced all the way around. So I apologize, and I'm not going to fix it in post because you know I don't edit. But Josh Rogosin, thank you so
There you
much
go.
for being on the show. Ta-da! I did it
But
right this time.
so you were at the New York Public Library, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like they posted since then, because I think they're gonna post the presentation, which is really cool.
Oh no, they posted it. It's up. I got the
Oh.
notification that's up, but I was there because I was like, oh wait, I get to go see how the master does it. Absolutely, I'm gonna
That
go.
was that was a wonderful experience to be at
Hmm.
the library with all the patrons and talking to actual audience members and explaining how we recorded some music live in Astor Hall across the way in the beautiful cavernous space. Yeah, that was a really special night.
Yeah, it was for all of us who came and watched how the magic happens, but also got to really listen to you do live audio engineering and audio magic when you had a singer-songwriter come up and do something
Yes.
that they had written. And that was also incredibly informative to me as an audio nerd myself. But I want to actually because I could be singing your praises or I could actually be asking you questions. So let me
Okay, let's do it. I'm so
because
sorry.
no, this is great. It's just it's one of these things where I've been very lucky in my life because I've had the opportunity to talk to some really amazing people. And you and I discussed when I first approached you to be on the show, we discussed the great Alan Lomax a little bit. And I want to sort of go backwards before we go forwards with you. For
Sure.
if you're listening to this and you don't know who Alan Lomax is, that means you haven't listened to the many episodes where I've talked about Alan Lomax. But Alan Lomax was an ethnomusicologist and he recorded music to preserve culture and recorded it all over the world, sometimes audio, sometimes video. But you, Josh, you record music to connect people across culture and to educate. And so I would love to ask you right off the bat, where do you see your work overlapping with his and in comparison with his? And where do you see and think it's evolving in a new direction?
Yeah, I really love the idea of documenting culture. You know, if Anthony Bourdain had a music show, that's kind of what I want to do. I
Mm,
almost compare myself more to Anthony Bourdain than to is it Alex Womack? I'm so sorry,
Alan
Alan.
Lomax. No problem.
Sorry, Alan Lomax. I know he was in that wonderful um tribute to Bob Dylan. I
Hmm.
forgot the name of that movie too. But yeah, Alan Lomax. So like I'm not 100% familiar with his work. Just things that I've heard about him and his work in the past is that, he's traveling the world and more like, yeah, documenting people's cultures and music before it disappears off this earth.
Hmm.
And I think that my approach to celebrating culture and music across the world is just much more about just capturing real moments in time as a journalist, as opposed to preserving something that might be disappearing someday.
Okay. So it's more present, it's more immediate. And I
Yeah.
guess I guess the
Does
thing that
do you
go
think
ahead.
Alan does Alan consider himself a journalist, or like
I think an
how is he
anthropologist.
self-described?
He was an
Yeah.
anthropologist more than he was a journalist. So he's passed away. His daughter actually put all of his recordings up on a website, and you can go and listen to recordings he made in the 1940s and the 1950s as he was
Oh, so
traveling the
cool.
world. It's the coolest thing ever. And so to me, because he was trying to preserve music, and in a way, you're trying to help creators create music and to inspire the
Mm.
next generation of musicians.
Yeah,
And
that's
mhm,
right. I'm much more interested in having musicians express themselves in ways that they haven't before. And that
mhm,
kind of is in tune with all the work that I did on Tiny Desk and now with Global Sound Concerts is like, how to get musicians maybe outside their comfort level a little bit, where we're capturing a performance in a real environment without the use of certain technologies like in-ear monitors or monitors at all, or even a PA system. I love the idea of capturing music and emotion, um, completely like removing as much technology between the performance and the listener as possible
mhm,
so that you can really get a sense of uh, place and expression in an uninhibited way. So it tends to be a much more intimate experience, but I also think it's really important to have the communal experience of a live audience. So that's a very key ingredient. And I like the idea of getting musicians. Like a lot of the musicians I've worked with before, they've never actually recorded without headphones, and they've never actually, you know, sat around maybe when they were writing a song in a hotel room or on a tour bus, but certainly never in sort of like a performance environment, done it in such a quiet, intimate way. Because, all this technology didn't exist for many, many years. You would go to an opera house and still to this day they don't use speakers or wireless mics on the performers. It was all handled before that technology existed. And I think there's something really nice about stripping away the technology again and doing something what I call like campfire style, where
mhm.
everyone's sort of gathered around experiencing something together. And that probably comes from my youth growing up going to summer camps and like, having a lot of music around in performances without the aid of sound reinforcement and just experiencing something so raw is really comes from my theater background and my camp background.
I love that so much. That's what, when you were describing it, I was thinking time immemorial, people have sat around campfires and told stories and made music together. I was born in the former Soviet Union, and it's a singing culture. And my mother is a singer, and I am a singer. And we used to sing whenever there was a party. We would sing, no mics, no nothing. Whoever was at the party would hear us. What's interesting to me, though, is in that space, you're in a room, there's dishes, there's a few people, maybe 20 people around the table. It's a very different sound than if you're, say, in Hill Auditorium at the University of Michigan, which is acoustically perfect. So, talk to me, if you would, about when you're walking into a new place and you're going to record in that space, and you said that you wanted it to be a little bit out of the comfort zone of the musicians. What are you listening for in the space in order to bring out the most vivid and vibrant performance or recording of these musicians?
Well, I think the key is to actually choose a space, or whether it's indoors or outdoors, or like in a performance hall, or in the entrance to a big beautiful marble library. I think choosing a spot that resonates with the musician and their music, and actually illustrates a bit of where they're from and who they are, is an integral part of what I'm doing with Global Sound Concerts in order to tell these people's stories.
Mm,
And I think that, um, just the environment that we're put in. Like when I was in Guadalajara and I recorded this musician called Ches Dana, and she's singing about shadows. And we woke up very early at like 7 in the morning, went to this beautiful edge of the city overlooking a gorge, and heard her beautiful music with birds chirping in the background. And the sun was at such a low angle, it casted these very dramatic shadows all over this outdoor amphitheater that we chose to record at. And she chose to play this song called Shadow. Oh, in Spanish, it was something else, of course. Sombra, La Sombra, which is like the shadow.
mm,
And it was just like, it all just sort of fed into itself. The musicians became really inspired about the dramatic scenery. And then the same was very similar, recording inside, like at Astor Hall at the New York Public Library, where I chose a musician, a string ensemble, Little Cruda. And Little Cruda, she, is from New York. She's lived there for 18 years. Her whole adult life is as a New Yorker. She made all these wonderful connections with these other string players, playing for very famous musicians, at late night shows, or the late night TV shows, or playing, for the Eagles and their string section touring the world. She's met all these incredible musicians, and she was playing her original music from New York. And I thought, what kind of music would make sense to record in this big marble, empty, gorgeous hall with a 4-second reverb tail?
mm.
And you know, I thought, man, a string section would be incredible. And my friend Jenna Lee, who was helping me coordinate, who works for the New York Public Library, she said, "What about Little Cruda?" Because I had introduced them in the past. And I was like, oh my God, that is the perfect musical group. And of course, she had recently put out an album last year, and she had, six incredible string players that she got together with only a couple of weeks' notice, maybe a week's notice. We all assembled in Astor Hall at 7 in the morning because we had to be finished before 10 a.m. when the library opened. And it was just like the perfect alliance between space and music. And it kind of just hit the whole nail on the head in terms of the project that I'm working on. And it was a great educational opportunity because I could use that performance and as part of my master class that evening to explain to the group who attended, hey, here's how we all came together. Here's the coordination that it took. We just recorded this at 7 in the morning, and here I have something to show you. And yeah, it was a really, really magical moment to say, I just made this up, and, asked people to kind of asked a lot of people to contribute and to give their time and talent and expertise. And it's amazing when you put yourself out there and have an idea, people will rally around it and will make magic happen. And I really feel like that's what happened at the library that night.
Hey there, this is Izolda breaking in for just 1 second to say, have I got a cool bonus for you? Josh and I decided that we wanted to bring you a little bit of Little Cruda's incredible performance at the New York Public Library in Astor Hall. So here it is. And now we return you back to the episode. Well, as someone who attended, I certainly felt that too. And what was interesting to me is you had some very interesting tech in your microphone. I remember seeing it and going, what the heck is that? It has all of these different places, all of these different looks like on one microphone, you had lots of different, I didn't even know how to describe it, but it was super amazing to look at that and to watch. You actually showed us, well, I'm going to take down this mic. You're not going to hear it. And it really affected the sound. And so
Mm.
I would love to hear from you about that notion. When you're doing something in Astro Hall, like you said, it had a 4-second reverb tail, which you can imagine in a huge empty all marble space. When you're doing that, what are you listening for to make sure that you're bringing out, I'm not even going to say the best sound, but maybe the sound that you would love to hear in these different spaces?
Yeah, there's no such thing as best sound. It's all subjective, which is why I
Hmm.
love audio and what we do. So, yeah, it was important in that instance to have the direct sound of each of the instruments. So I actually had clip-on mics for each of the violins. There were three violins, a clip-on mic for the viola, a clip-on mic for the cello, and a clip-on mic for the double bass. But if you use just those direct sounds and pan them out accordingly, it'll sound really nice, but it'll sound a little bit sterile, a little bit like a little too intimate, like
Hmm.
you have no sense of space. So how I augment that to actually get, the other character in the recording is Astor Hall itself. And I also shoot everything with video. I don't believe in audio only. Ever since my experience with Tiny Desk, I think audio only experience is great, but as soon as you add a video component, it just emphasizes everything that you're doing so much. So I'm a big proponent of, even for talking head podcasts, having having a visual component can add a lot of dimension, but especially for the work that I'm doing. Like if you just hear the recording for Astor Hall, it's lush, it's beautiful, they're excellent, they're talented. But as soon as you look at it at the same time, it's transformative. It is
Hmm.
just spectacular. Like, oh wow, that's why it sounds like that. And that's really what I'm trying to do in this modern age of, everything's on our phone, and having a visual component to your medium is so important. That's just something that I've just instinctually been wanting to capture. I think that it's a really important thing to have a visual component. So in the case of Astor Hall, I did have an ambisonic mic set up. And what that basically means is it's four directional mic capsules pointing in four different directions, like two up and two down, basically. And with software, you can use a decoding software from the mic manufacturer that I use is called Soyuz. They're actually Russian.
Mm.
And it's an excellent mic that I've had experience using, on piano and all this stuff. It's called the O13, which is just the capsule that it uses. But, within the past year, they came up with this four capsule ambisonic mic, which basically means in post production, you can kind of control how much of the ceiling reflections get into the recording, how much of the mic in front of you get in. Like if I want to sit the mic between the audience who's watching the string sextet and the sextet itself, I can kind of decide in post production, okay, how much of the mic do I want it to pick up where the string players are? How much of the mic do I want to pick up where the audience is standing and kind of create the balance? And also, I can decide how much of that ambisonic mic do I want to bleed into the recording. So I'm sort of augmenting the individual mics for the individual instruments with this, what we would call a room mic. But my room mic is ambisonic, which means it could be decoded in post production for this immersive audio that we've been keeping all this buzz about, like spatial audio on Apple. It's the same thing as Dolby Atmos, you've probably heard of. And now there's actually a new format that Google is licensing with Samsung. It's actually open source because all of those YouTube videos, they probably don't want to pay Dolby for the licensing. So they're coming up with their own open source licensing. That's going to be probably the future of YouTube and all of that playback. If you want to hear quote unquote immersive audio in a home theater with a Dolby Atmos like setup, it's called Eclipsa. So Eclipsa is the new open source Dolby Atmos from Google and Samsung, basically. And I'm just starting to play around with decoding my content for this immersive audio format that seems to be gaining a lot of traction. And perhaps once Google and YouTube jumps on board, and it's going to be in every Samsung TV, at least to start. And since it's open source, it might kind of overtake Dolby Atmos eventually, just because you don't have to license it.
Wow, that'll be very interesting to see how that develops because it's something I don't even know how to say it. It's something we want, but it's not something we can articulate that we want. Like people really, I think, enjoy that different kind of audio experience, but I wouldn't know exactly what the words would be to use to say that this is what I wanted. And so
No,
you
it's
go
true.
ahead.
Yeah, with Apple, it's like, yes, now we have spatial audio that plays back in AirPods, but does it sound better than just regular stereo? Yeah, it sounds cool. It sounds different. I think specifically for the work that I'm doing, trying to take people to specific locations, it makes a ton of sense. I don't know how much better it is to have like your album playing back in spatial audio versus regular stereo. I think there's benefits to both. But
Mhm.
I think for the work that I'm doing specifically, the introduction of Eclipsa is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it feels like almost the same as a movie that was made to be shown on IMAX screens versus a movie that was made to be shown on regular screens, right? You
Yeah,
don't necessarily see the benefits of it until you can experience it. And there's something there that's really very interesting because I feel like until you hear that sound the way that you were able to bring it to us, for example, at the library, you don't know what you're missing, I guess. And so I guess the question I have for you is with global sound, you're combining travel, you're combining music, you're combining architecture.
yeah.
There are all of these different things. And then, of course, on top of that is culture. And so I'd love to ask you, what do these elements share that most people won't notice until they experience it?
Well, I love the idea of going to a place that you've never been. And, the first thing I want people to notice when they watch a Global Sound concert video is, oh, wow, where is that? Because visually you're kind of discovering a place for the first time.
Hmm.
Where like maybe you've been to that city before, but you don't know exactly where I am. So, like I was in Mexico City at the Parque de Quetzalcoatl, and it's this gorgeous place with all these serpents and rooms, and there's this entrance to this cave basically with all these colorful patterns of tile, and I'm starting outside with our camera, our one-shot camera, and it's like you're seeing some rain, and then you enter into this cave and you see all this beautiful tile around you, and then you discover these musicians. But you're hearing the music from the beginning, from when you were outside. So it's sort of like,
Hmm.
what is that music? And oh, where are they? And then, oh, wow. And then it's like a big kind of like discovery moment. So I think there's something really powerful about using the medium of sound and visual and yeah, travel and location and place to sort of like, take a peek of a place that you might think but you don't. Like, it's like when you see the video from Astor Hall at the New York Public Library. The shot starts with, you know, buses on Fifth Avenue, and it's a really kind of frenetic sound of classical music in the background. I had them start with the more frenetic song. They did two songs, and I said, "Yeah, I think we need to start with the more frenetic one because I want to start the concert on Fifth Avenue. We're going to hear the music beautifully, but the visual is going to be Fifth Avenue, and then." All the buses are going by, the camera pans around. It, of course, sees the iconic lion out front, and all the music is going on while this is happening. And then you ascend the stairs with a bunch of people. You go through um, the turnstile, or what is that called? I forgot the name of it.
The
Sorry.
revolving door.
Yeah, is that what the name of this is? Yeah, the revolving door. Thank you.
Hmm.
And then I cut to my logo, and then on the other side of the Global Sound Concert logo, which is, the microphone that I use from Ear Trumpet Labs transforms into the world, and that's kind of like the whole concept of the show, wrapped up in a 5-second animation. As soon as it switches out to the world, you finish your journey through the revolving doors, and you discover this six-piece string ensemble playing the music that you've heard for the past 20 seconds. And I love that context it gives you, that moment of discovery that the beginning of each Global Sound concert gives you.
Mm. Yeah, and it is a real moment of exploration to me. In it was watching that happen, and here's why. I've been at the library walking in right at the beginning of the day when it's just opened, walking up those stairs, past the lions, patience and fortitude. We love the lions. And when you make your way in, there's a security guard and they're going to want to search your bag. But if there's nobody else there, there's this real hush to the whole place. And so seeing that part of it, seeing the juxtaposition and then hearing the music that's coming through and the music that you recorded was a beautiful, as I said, it was a beautiful juxtaposition because it lets you experience what music brings to whatever other experience you're having.
Mm.
And so I guess the question that I have for you about that facet of it is you've mentioned that your goal is to help people connect through music and culture, but you're also interested in inspiring the next generation of audio artists. I would love to ask you about the experience of music and how it can inspire the next generation of audio artists. What would that look like for you seeing people inspired to try wherever they are in the world and to make music immediate but also to preserve it for other people to then inspire them?
Yeah, I think it's been amazing going to different like conventions like the Audio Engineering Society convention, or I've also been invited to speak at NAMM in Anaheim, which is a big music conference.
Mm,
And it's amazing when people come up to me. A lot of students come up and say, all the work that you did on Tiny Desk and now on Global Sound Concerts and kind of like demystifying it all, just being able to just go up and record something and make something, whether or not it's going to be successful or not, is such a
hmm
huge inspiration. And now I've created my own tiny dorm concerts, and
hmm
we come and take a look at what we've created, and it's totally inspired by a few YouTube videos that you've made explaining your setup and how you do stuff and how you really demystify it all. And you just say, go out and make stuff. So I've been invited to a number of different colleges and universities to give like a 3-day workshop at the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And it was even at that caliber of excellence and musicianship. All of the students were so excited to spend some time with me in the studio. And what I do in a recording studio is, I tell all the musicians, take off your headphones. Let's all get in a circle and face each other. Can someone go to their dorm room and grab some lights on strings? Can we get some lamps in here? Try to get a mood going. And then I set up all the musicians facing each other. I put my ambisonic mic in the center of the musicians. I close mic everything as well. And then I asked the students after we set up the control room and all the routing and all of the recording that's going to happen. I said, all right, it's going to be super boring in here. Get in the studio and be an audience. Be
mm,
an audience for the musicians that are about to play. And they kind of look at me like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, yeah, but that's a part of the performance is that interaction that happens that comes from my theater background.
hmm
And then, I tell the musician, yeah, no headphones. Oh, yeah, we have these beautiful isolation booths and all these gobos that we can set up to get sound more discreet. I said, I don't care about any of that. I'm going to stand in the middle right next to the ambisonic mic, and I'm basically going to work with the musicians and direct them. If the guitar part's too loud during the verse, I say, hey, that guitar part, it's really covering up the vocal. Can you duck down? Can you play a little bit more dynamically? So you're not relying on individual headphone mixes to get the sound. You're really relying on the musicians to listen to each other, which is
mm.
something that can get lost when you get a lot of technology in the way.
I so love that you said that. And I so love that you have a theater background because this will all make sense to you. I'm currently directing a play, and that notion of actors listening to each other is critical in order for us to be able to actually come out with something. Because if they're not listening to each other, if they're just saying what they have to say, then we're only seeing maybe one third of what's possible, maybe even one quarter of what's possible. And so when I'm listening to you talk about this, it's almost like you're being a conductor of a symphony, even though what you're doing is recording the sound that's then going to be something that you can mess with all you want or leave as you heard it when you were present with it.
Yeah.
And what I would love to find out about that facet of this is you're working with students and you're saying, can you duck down your guitar? Can you bring this up a little bit? And then they're going to change based on the decisions that you make as far as when you're in the room with them. This is a strange question, or maybe it's not to you. How do you know that what you're asking for is the thing that you're going to want when you listen to it later?
Yeah, I think making sure that I have enough coverage in terms of direct miking, things that I know that I'll need to sort of supplement, or um, the biggest challenge is usually getting the musicians to play quietly enough that they're not overpowering or bleeding into the vocalist mic, because a lot of times a vocalist will be super quiet. I'll have to crank the vocalist level and it brings up everything else around
Mm-hmm.
that because
Mm-hmm.
there's no separation, there's no isolation, everything's happening in real time. But I'm also a huge proponent of embracing the imperfection
Mm-hmm.
and really capturing this stuff as a journalist rather than as, okay, we're not in a recording studio, we're not recording each instrument in an isolation booth, we're not recording each instrument at different times to have all of the control that we need after. And I'm not saying that what I'm creating should in any way replace, the recording studio version of any of this music. This is simply another way to capture it to supplement what's already happening, and you might capture another side of it that's really interesting and also valid, and also an enjoyable way to experience the same artist, the same music. I'm
Hmm.
not interested in replacing the recording studio version of any of these songs.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. I totally get that. And it's interesting because way back when in the 90s, I used to, back when the old post office pavilion was still the old post office pavilion, you being from DC
Oh
or
yeah.
living in DC, you know what that place was. Anyway, there was music every day from 12 to 1, and I played there
Oh,
three times
wow.
a week for years, right? So I'd bring my little Fender sound system, my guitar, my fiddle, my boom, and me, and I would play for an hour. And what was always interesting to me is that it's a cavernous place. It was this huge,
Yes.
tall space, and I did not have any idea how to do any kind of proper anything. I was just out there, and what I found was the same people would come back, even though I was often playing the same things day after day. The same people would come back three times a week to listen. They would sit at different parts of that area where you could sit and eat your lunch. And I once asked somebody, why do you do that? You come back every week. Why do you sit at different parts? And what she said was, you sound different depending on where I'm sitting, which I did not
Huh.
know, right? Because I had no idea. But here's what's interesting, right? You walk into a new recording space, a cathedral in South America, a seaside town in India, or Astor Hall at the public library. What is the first sound you are listening for?
It's really all of it. It's like the environment. So if we're outside in nature, it might be some birds. It could be the wind. It could be this rustling. It could be a dog being walked in the distance. And all of that paints a picture of where we are. And all of that is valid if someone says like, oh, I heard a bus go by. Do you need to do it again? Like sometimes no. Sometimes being in the middle of the city and having some bus traffic go by. There was one concert that we recorded in Chile, in Santiago, and it was in this like indigenous part of the city where they recreated different structures from different parts of Chile. And we were recording a band from Iquique in the north, so we found like a traditional northern structure. But like out front in the city, there was also like a marching band practicing. So in between the songs, you could kind of hear the marching band in the
Mm,
distance. And we could have waited for them to be quiet to like retape the little interstitial stuff or the quiet stuff. But I said, you know what? We're in the city of Santiago. It's a part of being here is that there's noise everywhere. So
hmm.
having a little bit of, I guess, what you would call noise pollution in the background, I usually end up embracing it. And if someone says, oh, wow, there's some sound in the background, I'm not really interested in making a stereo recording in a recording studio. It's not what I'm about. So I don't mind it. So I'm listening for, yeah, the environment, but in a place like Astor Hall, if there's a big reverb situation. We also recorded in Monterrey, Mexico, this woman called Carla Cruz, and it was like a massive reverb echo chamber in there. It was insane. So I had to listen for that reverb. And there was a drummer involved. So I basically had to work with the band to basically play as quietly as they possibly could so it wouldn't all turn into mush, basically,
Mm,
just
hmm.
reverb mush. And it turned out great. So but it was super cool to be recording in that space visually. And I think, if you have the context of the visual with the audio, Carla already recorded that song a number of different ways, a number of different times. It's on her album. What's the harm in making a version that's completely different?
Hmm.
That illustrates a bit of where she's from, and you get to see her musicians in a different context, playing in this totally unique environment. I think it's just thrilling.
Wow, it's like you handed me my next question on a silver platter. So the question is, in that space, what do you think changes in a performer and perhaps even in the audience when the environment itself becomes part of the music?
Yeah, I make it really challenging because especially if it's like a full band, in that case with Carla and Carla Grunwald as well in this beautiful palace in Santiago de Chile. She was incredible. Um, they all I don't give them monitors, as I've said. They all have to play, they have to be situated visually so it looks good on camera, of course, but they also have to be situated so that they can hear each other. So I often work with the artists, you know, in the case of Carla Grunwald, her brother played acoustic guitar and she really needed to key into him. So she's like, yes, as long as my brother is close by, I'm good. So I had
Mm,
him on her right, and then I had a cellist on her left, and then the violinist, and then the drummer all the way off to the side so that the drum sounds wouldn't bleed into the mic, and then, the three backup singers just to the right of the guitarist. So everything was visually balanced beautifully, but they could also hear each other. And they also had to play much more dynamically than they were used to in order to hear each other.
hmm
So, yeah, what we asked them to do is super unique and out of their comfort zone as professional musicians who are used to having in-ear monitors and a bunch of knobs in front of them so that they could literally dial in the exact level of every single source that they need so that
hmm
they can give their best performance. And what I'm asking them to do is just pretend like it's 100 years ago before any of this technology existed.
mm hmm Yeah, it's interesting. I lead down in DC again. I lead a holiday caroling group, and we perform 4, 5, 6 part a cappella harmony, never amplified. And what's interesting
Right.
about that is how differently you have to listen to one another in order to create that music. So when I hear you talk about it this way, the musicians certainly have to listen and respond differently than they would if they had all of their gear. I guess I want to ask
And
you.
self-mix. And self-mix. They think, okay, and how I direct them as a producer
Hmm
is essential. So it's like, okay, the chorus, like when um Nile Rodgers came to Tiny Desk and they're saying, "We are family." And it was like super loud, everyone's full out. And then the verse comes and it's just like one voice and this
Mm,
huge band. So I had to direct them. Okay, as soon as she comes in with the verse, I literally need the whole band to just drop in volume altogether.
hmm
And they were incredible musicians, of course, and they took the note beautifully. And as soon as she came in, the entire volume just went zhunk, and it was
hmm
completely a different level setting so that, I could be able to mix it appropriately in post-production because they're all
hmm
on top of each other and there's all that bleed, but also so that the audience in the room could actually hear what's happening vocally.
Sure.
So that's something that I do as a producer. Go ahead, sorry.
No, no, no. And I agree with you. I mean, I constantly tell people whenever I'm directing anybody, you have to support the lead in that way. If there's one
Right.
vocalist, you have to support the lead. If you're not, then no one's going to hear the lead. And it's going to be lovely music, but the vocals will be lost. So I completely understand and agree with you. But I do want to ask you, you have recorded thousands of sessions. How do you keep your ears and your creativity sharp when you're recording so many different sessions a year?
I think it's just, the love of music and just sort of having my own taste and making decisions based on my taste, which is going to be different than, Izolda's taste, and it's going to be different than anybody else's taste who you're
Mm-hmm.
working with. And understanding there's no right or wrong answer, but just, because I grew up performing and doing musical theater and recording a lot of music and now mixing a lot of music, I just feel like I have a natural sense of where things should live, but that's just for me, you
Mm-hmm.
know? That's completely objective. And if other people like it and agree with some decisions that I've made, then that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But so much of what I do is dependent on also the, you know, is the music any good to begin with? And that's a difficult thing. It's also very subjective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, It's hit or miss too. You could show up. I've been holding all these contests as part of my travels when I come to like a university, like the Sci Institute in Mexico City. I put out a contest call for submissions on Instagram with the hashtag Global Sound CDMX for Mexico City. And, 130,000 people viewed it, and we had probably, 1,000 submissions. It was really quite something. But it's very hard with a 1 minute clip on Instagram to get a sense of
Mm.
if musicianship. I'm sure you can do a little more research and see how they are. And sometimes the musicians are incredible and they knock your socks off. Sometimes they're having a bad day and maybe someone has a cold or, you can't predict anything. And I think that's what's really amazing and fun about what it is that I'm doing with Global Sound Concerts is, you know, going out and making stuff and really not knowing what the result is going to be. And, it's going to be good and appealing to someone, but not everyone. And I think that's
Mhm.
really exciting to celebrate the diversity of music and place. Is that, what might not be up your alley or your cup of tea is someone else's. And I think that's what I've discovered in all of this is that um, I, uh, I love it all, There's not one genre or one group that I've said, ah, that wasn't quite good or I didn't like that because I see the value in all of it. It's just a matter of what your personal preferences are.
I couldn't agree more. And it's fascinating to me to sort of follow your work and see how you're doing it. Because for me, I've always used music, specifically singing, because I'm primarily a singer, as a way of understanding the world. I sing in over 20 languages, in part because I love singing
Wow.
songs from different cultures. Yeah, I play the college circuit where I go and I do diversity programming and I sing in Swahili and Japanese and Italian and Spanish and French and this and that and the other. And what's interesting to me about it is I don't I don't record myself anymore. It's just a live performance, but a lot of the students do. So there are all these little videos of me out
Mhm.
on YouTube or whatever performing, and they're all everybody's a producer now. Everybody, if you've got an iPhone or whatever the Google version is, you can go out and do it.
Very true.
And so let me ask you, what advice would you give to someone who wants to build their own sort of sonic passport and record music as a way of knowing their world, but understanding the greater world? What's the thing that you would say to someone who wants to do it and doesn't know where to begin?
Yeah, well, what I would say is don't let the technology intimidate you anymore because as you said, like we all have the technology in our pockets now. And I remember when Take and the Bangas won the Tiny Desk contest years ago, and they were incredible. Their submission that won was literally shot on a phone with
Awesome.
no other supplemental anything. And it was just their raw talent and energy and vibe that won the day, even though, frankly, the video quality and the audio quality weren't that wonderful. But it didn't matter. It was secondary. So, if you're in a situation where there's the vibe that's happening or the talent that's happening, don't be afraid or intimidated. But there are things you can do, even with just your cell phone, to make it even better. You can listen in such a way that you can direct your musicians to play dynamically. If there's a moment that's overpowering, whether it's a drummer or a horn player, you can physically place them in different locations so that it won't overwhelm the recording. If you could just like sit in the middle of the musicians and listen to them, give them some direction, uh, physically position certain musicians further away from the camera than others or the microphone. There are things you can do, or find an environment that's acoustically appropriate. If there's a bunch of background noise that's too distracting, try to find another location. So there are a number of things you can do that have nothing to do with the technology that you're using. Um, and I think that you know, it's worth going out there and making and sharing stuff. And that's the beauty of all this social media that can be detrimental, of course, to mental health and all of these things that we can be weary of. But there's also a tremendous opportunity to create community and to celebrate diversity by using this technology as well.
That was lovely. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I'm so grateful that you're out there doing it. I mean, you did Tiny Desk Concerts for many years, and now you're doing this, but on a grander and yet more intimate scale, which I just absolutely adore that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was obviously a huge leap of faith, and but you're not going to grow and get better without challenging yourself. And I thought, what's the hardest possible thing I could do? And then I chose to do it, with no security blanket, just kind of taking a leap of faith and recognizing that, having all of that security and notoriety is incredible, but I don't know, you get complacent, you don't grow.
That's right. The A seed breaking out of its shell is not a gentle process. It's actually
No.
quite a violent one. So
Correct.
let me ask you, Josh. I could keep you here for the next 6 hours because I have so
I
many more
know.
questions. But I know you have a day to get back to. So I would love it if you would share if someone wants to know more about the work that you're doing with Global Sound. Where do they go? Where do they find you? How do they follow you so that they can learn more about this and maybe expand their own understanding of the music of the world?
Thank you. Yeah, so I have globalsoundconcerts.com. And then, of course, there's the YouTube page, which is at Global Sound Concerts. And my personal social media is at Josh Rogosin. So, and any of those three places is good. I'm on all the socials as at Josh Rogosin or at Global Sound Concerts. And I'm always open to suggestions, questions. I always try to answer my direct messages. If you're able to check out the Global Sound Concerts YouTube page, there's lots, there's probably about 20 concerts so far that I've put up from all over the world, and certain playlists like some of my favorite Tiny Desk concerts and other sort of educational lectures and master classes that I've given. I've put in a playlist on the YouTube page. And yeah, and I think on globalsoundconcerts.com there is a place for, donations and all that stuff. So if anybody out there is listening and is inspired and wants to support my work, either just by checking it out or financially, of course, um, please get in touch. I would love to be inspired by your ideas.
That is awesome. And do you have a Patreon page by any chance?
I do. Um, and that should be at Josh Rogosin or at Global Sound Concerts. I can't remember. I've I haven't looked at it very recently, but
Okay.
I know I set it up. So and I need to start dropping some more exclusive content and stuff. I've got a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but I'm basically a one man band, and
Mm,
I'm trying to release concerts every single week, and it is a massive undertaking, as you can imagine,
I
but
believe it.
a ton of fun. So, yeah, especially with all the different places to keep track of, whether it's your TikTok, which of course, I have a TikTok at Josh Rogosin as well, and like Instagram and X, and there's just so many outlets where this stuff can live. So,
Hmm.
I'm really concentrating on like Instagram and the YouTube page primarily.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's a lot, but just if you're listening to this and you're going, wait, what did he say? I am going to put all of the links to all of those in the show notes. So you can just go over to the show notes and click any of them and get right to Global Sound or right to Josh Rogosin. See, I said it right that time.
Perfect.
Josh, I'm super grateful to you for taking the time to be here. I have just two more short questions that I ask everybody who comes on the show, and they're silly questions, but I find that they can yield some profound answers. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so the first question is, what is it that gets you up in the morning? And I don't mean your alarm.
Yeah, I love waking up and discovering and learning people's stories through music, and I love travel. So, I think we just grow and learn so much when we leave our front doors. So yeah, that's what gets me up in the morning is leaving my front door. The thought of leaving my front door and discovering something new.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm similar. I love getting up. I make my cup of coffee. I go out on my balcony and I wake with the dawn. So I look at the sunrise and then I'm like,
Amazing.
okay, what's next? Right? What's the cool thing I get to experience today? And I'm very lucky in that way. The last question, here we go. If you had an airplane, environmentally friendly, of course, that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Don't worry, be happy.
The great Bobby McFerrin. I
Yeah,
love it.
exactly. Yeah.
If you haven't seen his World Neuroscience Institute video, I'm going to
No,
send you that link. Have you seen it?
please. No.
Oh, for you, this will be catnip. It is unbelievable. I'm going to send it to you. And if you're listening to this, you know I talk about this all the time because it is sheer brilliance. What Bobby McFerrin does with an audience that has never been
Mm.
together before is unbelievable musically. It has to do with music. You will love this, Josh. All righty. Thank you, Josh, once again for being on the show. I'm super grateful for you coming. You're welcome back anytime because I have like another 25 questions we could have gotten to. So maybe next time we'll get to more. In the meantime, this is Izolda Trachtenberg for the Your Creative Mind podcast. You know you need to go listen to Josh Rogosin. Find the website, find him on social, because obviously he's doing sacred work here. And I say this as a musician, but also as an avid fan. In the meantime, if you've liked what you've heard, tell a friend. I would love to get more ears on these spectacular people. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg reminding you, as always, to be curious, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Izolda Trachtenberg and is copyright 2025. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope.